Hi everyone, we're back again with Michael Ness, and I'm going to be continuing with the platformer engine project that I've been showing. Uh, you there, Mike?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, cool. So first I will just quickly show you the progress I've been making. All right, so let's see if it works if I just run this level here. All right, so don't mind the fact that there's a text. If you could see, it says health 2 there.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah, I
just
see that.
using that for some debugging because, among other things, I've started adding save state slots so people can save their progress and continue where they left off.
Cool.
Um, but anyway, so that was, for some reason, the health was not staying updated from screen to screen, so I used that text on that layer to help make sure what the variable was,
Sure.
to see if it was the star sprites up there in the HUD that were not updating or the variable itself was somehow resetting. But anyway,
Right.
so as you can see, there's this weird looking turquoise and white bridge now.
Yeah, I see that.
And that is still just the collision sprite. I haven't made the tile graphics for it. But what that
Okay.
represents is now we have what are called jump through platforms. And those are the kinds of platforms that you can jump up through from beneath.
Okay.
So
There were.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
that was the spot with the special power up or something below that, right?
Yeah, it has the bouncy mushroom that I added.
Yeah.
So
Right.
so I'm gonna drop down here. We get into the secret area. There's
Yeah,
still
that's
not
it.
much down here, but now there's
Oh, what was
this
that?
placeholder art blue mushroom,
Oh,
and
cool.
I can walk through it, but if I jump up on it, it acts as a trampoline. And if I hold down the button while I'm bouncing on it, I'll jump up higher. And I don't know if you noticed, but the
Oh,
screen
wow.
actually
Yeah,
zoomed out, so you could see
I see
more.
that.
And now it's slowly zooming back in. So
That's cool.
that's on a
Pretty
timer.
neat effect.
Excuse me. So that's on a timer, and all of that can be set with variables. So let me go back down there quickly. Um, so in the editor, I could place and rotate and even scale, if I wanted to, the mushrooms to be on different angles and to basically cause different changes to the x and y velocity of the player when the player bounces off it. And you
Okay.
can also control the extent of the zoom and the duration of the zoom. So you could have this really cool sequence where basically from one of these bouncy, and obviously the graphics could be changed with anything, but probably it'll be a mushroom for the art that comes with the thing. Um,
Right.
but anyway, the point is, like, you'll be able to create springboard or trampoline type, like, entire sequences where once you jump on the first one, the screen can pan out as much as you want, and then you would be automatically bounced from one to the other to clear a large distance of a level.
All right.
So that's how
So,
that
so
works. Yep.
one other thing. What was that? It looked like a fire thing you were throwing or something. What is that?
All right.
I didn't see that before.
Oh, okay. So the hot tamale that
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
discussed before,
Yes.
when you grab that, that allows you to throw your.
Ah. Okay.
That's when your head turns that mystical golden color.
Yep. Right. Yes.
um, then you can that's telling you can, and that art will also be replaced. It'll be cooler. You won't just have a golden head when you get the power. But that was just my way of quickly using temp art in that I could just tint the head in Photoshop to quickly create a character map for the character so that I could make sure the functionality works. But
Yeah.
eventually I'll give him a cooler look when he has the fire power. So there's that. And I don't think I really changed anything in this level. Um, and then I finished, I think the boss was still quite incomplete. Um, if I recall, it was still halfway
Yeah, you worked on having him like turn around or something last time,
Yeah,
but
there we go.
there were some other animations that he didn't have.
Right. Oh yeah, so I still have not done the sort of arm punch slamming down the ground thing, but
Okay.
otherwise he's at least the boss is now completely the spriter version. I've gotten rid of the other one, the old sprite version and the code associated with it. So now he's fully functional. And he can be
Cool.
hurt, and he can
Oh,
hurt
neat.
you. He'll turn around in a second. There we go. So mid jump he can't turn around, but now also because it's spriter based, even within the specific timeline of a single animation, I can define exactly when he's capable of turning.
Very cool.
So, and then I'll just kill him. I forgot how many hit points I gave him, but he should die pretty soon. Oh, I also added a cool thing. I added a body hitbox to the spriter animations and a head. And watch what happens when I hit him in the head. Did you see him recoil? So
Yeah, I
he
did. Cool.
actually, that lets you know that you're doing more damage.
Oh, okay.
And then there's this gorgeous you win screen
I see that.
that, yeah,
It's very satisfying.
yes, and then more string
Oh, yeah.
to
You're
do some. I was, like I said, I was working on,
debugging.
yeah, I was working on save state, so that was to return the data string for the save state. But all right, so.
Very cool.
All right, so this is, oh yeah, before I show you the menu system, and that's going to be the majority of this recording, I think I'm going to be showing you how I worked on, like, I can touch the specific menu option, and then this you can see I'm working on also the screen where you choose which save slot, and it's going to tell you
Oh,
the
yeah.
percentile. And that ugly box that says empty, that's going to be like the person that changes this engine to make their own game. Those can be portraits showing the specific world that the player is currently in, or level, or whatever.
All right.
And then it just, the second line just says whichever slot number it is, and then after that is what currently says 0 because of a bug is going to be, you're going to be able to give a custom name to each slot.
All right.
And then, so if you have siblings or friends playing the game, they can name each slot so they can't forget and use their friends or siblings slot accidentally. And then, of
Right.
course, percent will remind you how far along in the game you are, how much you've completed.
Okay.
So I'm going back to the home screen. But as you can see, the menu system has a nice introduction animation where it slides in off of the side of the screen.
Yeah.
It makes it obvious which thing is currently selected. I'm using the arrow keys now, so the keyboard I can navigate, and the Z or Z key I can make a selection, or I can touch with the touchscreen. Mouse obviously works too, and I can pick up my controller, so the control pad works as well.
Oh, neat.
And this is all with Spriter. So in a minute, I'm going to show you how I make all that work. But before I do, I wanted to quickly go back to the mushroom here. Let's see. So let me scroll down and just show you sort of how I did that. All right. So let me make sure this layer is unlocked. Okay. So if I click on the mushroom, I get its properties, and you'll see I added several instance variables. So when someone designing a level places, so they can just go into objects or project and then object types and find the mushroom, which is in here somewhere. I've got a lot of stuff now. I might eventually break that into subfolders for easy finding of stuff. But so here it is, Spring Shroom, I called it. So what you would do is just set, for example, if I wanted this particular mushroom to send you bouncing off on an angle like this, then I can actually place it. Oh, let me turn off grid snapping here. So I could actually put it on an angle like this, and then I could set, you can see we have vertical bounce, vertical high bounce is if the difference when you have the button held down. So if you
Okay.
want, you could make like a really overzealous bouncy mushroom that sends you the same amount no matter whether or not you have bounce held down. Like if
Yeah.
you really need to control a very specific sequence, horizontal bounce is how much X inertia will be put on the player as well. And then zoom amount, so 0.6, so it'll pan out until it's 60% of the normal size, and then zoom duration, that's in hundredths of a second, I think. So, so the bigger this number, the longer it will stay zoomed out once it reaches that point before slowly transitioning back to the normal scale. So,
Cool.
yep. So that's how that works. And then, so all I'm doing, if you want to go into the code, is
Are those numbers like the vertical
right.
and horizontal? Are those like pixels per like second, or how?
That's a good question. I don't remember. I know I'm directly affecting whatever it is in the built-in. Like it's using the same numerical system as the actual built-in platformer behavior of Constructed.
Okay.
So I'm just sort of used to it and roughly how big or small each number should be. But I don't recall. I think it is in pixels per second. So let's see. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the case. I can double check actually in a moment. But okay, so I'm going to do bouncy.
Not a big deal.
Oh no, it's not there. What's going on? Let's see. Oh, it's called Spring. That's why. No bouncy. Spring Shroom. Alright, is that what? Why am I not finding it? There's got to be an event where I have the collision with the mushroom. And it's going to be toward the bottom because I added it recently. And I haven't reorganized yet. Why am I not seeing it? Let me make sure I'm in level events. Maybe I accidentally put it in another event sheet. That would be interesting. Oops. Oh, that's really weird. I wonder. Let's see. Theoretically, the only thing I could have done was put it in one of the other event sheets that are shared. But I'm not seeing it. That's really weird. And it can't be in the boss one because that one's not shared at that moment. Let me think. No, not there. We're having a 2 hours later moment. Let's see.
It's just magic.
Yeah, it's kind of blowing my mind that it's that just doing a search for Spring Shroom is not finding it. Am I hallucinating that the name is? That would not be ironic. Let's see. Oops, jeez. Control A didn't look, or it didn't look like Control A there. Yeah, that's blowing my mind. How can it not be there?
So that search up there, that's just for the sheet you're on. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not
yeah,
global.
Exactly. Show add action links. And I haven't changed anything. So, like, for instance, you could see there's keyboard here.
Yeah.
So if I type in keyboard, it's going to, oh wow, maybe there's a bug going on. Oh,
No,
no, I
you
misspelled keyboard.
misspelled.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, keyboard. So now you can see it
There
filters
it is.
just
Yeah.
keyboard. But it should also work with partial. So if I do key, it's still going to give me everything that has the word, KEY, which it's
Right.
working perfectly. So why not for spring? And even when I copied and pasted it. So, and I just checked every event sheet. So clearly I'm doing something like silly. But it's pretty mind-boggling at the moment how I could be missing this. Fate events. Like the only possibility I can think of is when I added the code, I was accidentally in the wrong event sheet, but it was still an event sheet that is used during gameplay levels, so it worked, and therefore I
Yeah.
didn't notice. But I am in here.
Does the object have any connection to the event sheet?
Oh, you know what? Maybe for some strange reason, I made it into a group. I'll bet you that's what I did. Okay. I'll bet you I I think it's called families in Construct 2. So, okay, this is starting to make sense. I'll bet this is the case. All right, so if you look in families, I'll bet you there's
Yeah.
something, let's see.
Trampolines.
There we go. That's why. Okay, thank goodness. All right, so yeah, I decided maybe people want a lot of visual variation between levels and stuff. So they could
Sure.
create different sprites, and as long as they put those sprites in the same family, then it would work. So that's why we're not finding it. So trampolines. So now I can search for tramp, for example, and then now we have the actual code. So it says basically if the player rectangle object, which has the actual platformer behavior, if it's falling, and then the little foot collision sprite called feet collide, that's always pinned to the bottom of the sprite. If that is overlapping one of the trampoline sprites, then we're going to change the animation of the sprite, the trampoline object, to the bounce animation, which is really hard to notice anyway since you go flying away from it. But anyway, so it does that, and then we have the sub events that say if the character is stuck in a move. So let's say you're like you've been hit or you're in the middle of throwing your fireball, then you can't simultaneously be holding the jump button to get the extra bounce. So okay, so if you're stuck in a move, then it does set the vector y of the platformer behavior of the rectangle to that particular trampoline object's vertical bounce variable that I showed you. And then we do the same thing to the vector x. So basically the player is going to get sent flying horizontally and vertically to whatever degree you set in the variable of that particular trampoline sprite. And then the last thing we do is we take the spriter object, which is the visual representation of the player, and we set the animation to jump start. And then a jump start is like the very beginning of a jump animation, and then automatically when it's done with that animation, it goes to the jump loop animation, so that no matter how much airtime you have a nice repeating looping jump animation, and then once you start falling, it transitions into a falling animation. But anyway, and then jumpy is the global variable I had set for if someone is holding the jump button. So if it equals 0, meaning they've not been holding the button, or they're not currently holding the button, then it's going to do exactly the same thing. So I could switch this to an OR block. I could switch this to say, for example, make OR block, and then just drag that right up there. And these are identical, so I can now delete this. And then this one is if jumpy is greater than 0, which means the player is holding the jump button, then it's setting
Mm-hmm.
it to the vertical high and the horizontal high. So if you're holding jump, when you bounce off, you'll get thrown farther. And then, oh yeah, and that's when the zooming happens, when
Yeah.
you do the high bounce off of it. So then we set,
Okay.
I have a camera sprite, and I added some extra code so we're setting the variables for target zoom in the camera sprite and zoom duration. So we're transferring those settings from the trampoline sprite to the camera sprite, so then the camera can handle its own code and handle the zooming.
Yeah.
So, and then the player, I don't know if you noticed, but the player will do a somersault animation if you bounce off of something while you're holding the button and doing the higher thing. And that's also
Oh,
the case when you bounce off of an enemy with the button held down, the jump button. So,
did not see that.
okay, so let me
Makes
switch to
sense.
camera. Yeah, actually, that may not have been the case the last time I showed you. I don't remember, like in our last broadcast.
Yeah, I don't recall it, but
So I switched to camera, so now you can see we've got every tick means every time the code loops, like every update of the computer.
mhm.
We set the X position of the camera to a certain thing, and same for Y position. But there's some math in there that will make sure that if your player can like go off of the screen or walk off or really close to the edge, that the camera doesn't
Mhm.
scroll over that far, because then you would see where the level graphics ends and then there's just like empty space. You know, your world
Okay.
would just. So I use that. That's what the clamp thing is for. Is to say yes, set the X position to the position of the player, but only within a certain range,
All
based
right.
on the overall position of the level map. And then let's see.
Now, does the camera? d- I noticed that the camera will stay zoomed out for a little while. That I assume is with the duration variable that you had there.
Right, exactly.
But
Yep.
the time that it takes for it to go back to normal, or the
Hmm.
time that it takes it to zoom out, that's not instant.
Right.
Is that is that
Currently, it's
set
going.
anywhere, or is there some default values?
I don't remember. It's definitely something that you could change, but you could not currently change that per trampoline sprite. So
Okay.
let's look at the code here. So here we have every hundredth of a second,
Hmm.
um, the layout scale, which is a built-in construct 2 thing. So that's saying what is the current zoom out, basically, of the entire camera. We'll say the built-in zooming function of construct 2. If that is greater than the camera target zoom, then we're going to set the layout scale to layouts. Go ahead.
I see what's going on there. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're setting the layout scale to itself times 0.98, so it's going to slightly reduce the scale, so it's going to be zooming out. And
Right. So
then
changing that 0.98 to something smaller, like zero point 0.7 or something, that would zoom it out faster.
exactly right. Yeah. And then we have every hundredth of a second. If zoom duration is greater than 0, then we're going to subtract 1. So yeah, so basically I had set that in that particular mushroom sprite to 300, so that would be 3 seconds. So it's going to, once it starts zooming out to the total value, which was in the case of that one, 0.6,
Hmm.
it's going to start counting, um, counting through whatever that duration value was. And then once that hits 0, as you can see, zoom duration equals 0. Then we set target zoom to 1. So target zoom was 0.6, and now we've just set it back to full 1, which is, the standard 100% of its actual size.
Right.
And then we also have every hundredth of a second layout scale is less than 1, and zoom duration equals 0. Then we set layout scale to, and then the minimum layout. So this basically, what is this doing? What's left to do?
Zooming back in, it looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So once you're all zoomed in, or zoomed out, based on what the mushroom did to you, this is what brings it back to normal. So as you can see, it's just going to do it for however long it takes. So it does it for the same rate of scale. So if you zoomed out more, it's going to take a little bit longer to get back to the standard zoom.
Sure.
Right. So that's how that's all working so
Neat.
far.
That's pretty slick.
Yep. So it really already there's a lot of potential for game layout design with jump through platforms now. You can do secret hidden areas that get revealed with that very close foreground layer fading away so that you can see what's going on. And then, and
I had one other question too.
Yep.
When like right now that mushroom's at an angle, and if you change the different vertical bounce and horizontal bounce variables,
right,
and send the character off at an angle,
right.
does then I assume Construct has some kind of gravity type calculation that it uses for jumping? Does that take effect too?
That's a great question. I think you're asking maybe a couple of things, but what I first thought you were asking for sure is, will the visual angle you set for the sprite affect the where it's going to be sending you? And that's not the case. That's where you just set these variables, because you might, for whatever reason, not want, like for example, for a visual reason, you might want this mushroom, like it might look better if it's at a slightly different angle than the angle it would technically send you flying at. So so the visual aspect can be controlled separately. These are only these numbers is going to change the X and Y velocity. So obviously if I want it to send you flying vertically and horizontally at the same rate, then I would change these numbers to be pretty much the same. So like for example, negative 900 and negative 900. And then what you could do, which is cool, you could even have it send the player flying in the opposite direction.
Oh yeah.
So you could do something like that, and
jump on
set these to positive. So vertical bounce would be 900.
Okay.
So then when the player hits that, he'd go bouncing back down very quickly.
That's cool.
Oops. Let's see. Undo. But
anyway, I guess the other question I had was, like, if you had it on the main level there and he at an angle, would he, once you set the bounce level, like the vertical bounce and the horizontal bounce, once that's completed, will he then like arc over things?
Okay,
like,
I get it.
Could you make a mushroom that like launches him over a tree or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's what's going to happen automatically. I totally understand what you had asked before.
Okay.
Yeah. So now I do. I mean, so what I'm doing is I'm setting these variables into the actual built-in platform behavior. So we're sort of hijacking. So I didn't mean to double click. So if I click on it and we see in its properties, we've got the platform built-in. So we've got max speed, acceleration, deceleration. We could affect those on the fly as well. So it's not like you just set it once at the beginning and then you have no control. So for the advanced version of this engine, which I'll eventually do, I'm going to be adding stuff like water you can swim in and stuff like that. So I'll be hijacking it and saying, if you're within a water area, then you will change the gravity, change the jump strength, change the deceleration and acceleration so that you get a nice floaty feeling.
Yeah, sure.
And then when you're not in water, then obviously it would revert all of these back to the standard, on land settings. So that's how you would get the different physics depending on whether or not you're in water. So that's how that works. So so basically this built-in behavior already has those things, like its current x velocity, y velocity, and so on. And by hijacking and forcing these new variables in there, from the very first frame that it has these new variables, it's already like its own gravity and acceleration and deceleration are already having an effect. So it's going to naturally still behave just like you would expect it to based on the physics you're used to. You've just got flung
Okay.
a distance, but it's automatically decelerating your x and your y to match the standard behavior, if
Gotcha.
that makes sense. So
Yeah, that does.
yeah. So you don't
That's
like
cool.
have to hand program falling
Okay.
back down or losing your x inertia after time. All of that is going to happen automatically because what we're doing is we're not adding code on top of the platformer behavior or that sort of wrestling with it. We're just injecting suddenly new variables into its built-in variables that handle its x and y velocity.
Oh, that makes
So
sense.
that's why
Okay.
that's working.
Cool.
All right, so yeah, let's get back now to, let me see, where is this? The splash screen. So let me show you. So you can see all of this mess of sprites up here.
Yeah.
And text, and those are the sprites that got automatically generated when I imported the spriter file and I added a layer. Let's see, I think it's on the stuff layer maybe. There's a spriter object that I centered on screen right here called menu, and I'm going to show you that actual spriter file now. So here we are in spriter, and as you can see, in order for me to set this up, what I originally did, making sure we're still recording, what I originally did was give myself a background image that represents the size of an actual entire screen, and I
Okay.
centered it to 0, 0. And then so I used that as a guide. So it was there behind every animation. So I'm just putting it back so that you can see how it works. I'm going to fix it Z order. Hold on. Edit. Copy. Where's copy Z order? Copy Z order. There we go. All right. So that's how I knew when things are safely off screen and exactly how far to bring them in so that they'll be on screen. But then once I was done with all of the animations, then I just went in, selected it, and held Shift and pressed Delete, and that deletes it from all the frames.
Okay.
All right. So anyway,
Cool.
so as you can see, I created buttons, which are a combination of a text sprite and a background. So we have this, and then we have an image with the text, and then like I could use that image or an action point as a placeholder, and then attach a an actual text object or what's called a sprite font to each one.
Okay.
But that would require a lot more sort of noodling around by the artist or designer to make sure that once it's running in the actual game engine, that the actual text object that the game code is putting in place of those action points is in
Yeah.
the perfect place and is centered, in that the font itself is the right size. So I wanted to
Okay.
eliminate all the guesswork, and this way also people could visually animate. So for example, if I wanted, I could make it so that the text is invisible. For example, we could bring down its opacity, right? So, and then we'll do that here too. All right, I gotta do it here as well. So now it starts invisible, slides on, and then it fades. Like once it lands, it fades in.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
So yeah, that's stuff that would be a lot harder to do. And like I could even do stuff like make it start out squished as well. Oops, why is it doing that? Looks like a bug. Anyway, the idea would be Like, I don't know why it's scaling. It's almost like it thinks maybe my keyboard's screwing up. It's like it thinks shift is held down or something. It doesn't matter in this case. So as you can see, like now the text is fading in and zooming out. So you can do all kinds of fancy stuff very easily to customize your menu animations. And so the person that gets this platformer engine is also going to get this actual Spriter file so that they can go into Spriter and completely customize the actual like movements and fades, but they could also change the actual artwork very quickly. Like obviously this is just one image, so you could and you could completely change the look. And another thing that you could do is if you wanted to add multi-language support, you would just have other language versions of these little text images, and then you would set up a character map that would be, you'd have one called English, one called, French or Russian or whatever, and then and then by setting that character map, it would be swapping out all of these English ones with the other one, and then in the game you would just say, you'd have a menu button somewhere with maybe a flag to toggle which language you want, and then just say, if the French flag is touched or clicked, then change, set the character map to French, and then you'd have the whole menu system would then just automatically update to whatever language. So,
neat.
All right, so once it plays, here's where it gets really kind of cool in Spriter. So you could see we have some animations are carefully set to be a looping animation, and some are not set to looping, which means they're gonna trigger that they're finished once they stop playing in the game engine. So what I did is I created in Spriter Pro, I should say, you can set metadata. So if you look down here, I can expand metadata, and you can see I added a ton of different bits of metadata to this entity. So you can see here it's called main menu, that's the entity. So if I add any variable to the metadata in any animation, that variable is now available to me for all of the animations within that entity. And then I can set, like anywhere in any keyframe, I can change the value of those variables. And they can be text strings, they can be integers, or they can be floats, like what's the other word for that? A number with a decimal point.
Decimal points, or
there's another word for it, but I can't think of it right now. But anyway, so and let me just show you how you would do that. Like you can go anywhere in the timeline, or I press the 1 key to get back to the first keyframe. If I double click anywhere in this metadata area, as you can see, this shows me the current time. So if I need to be really accurate, I can type something in. So for example, if I want to add something to this exact timeline where something happens at 400, then I can double click in here and even be sloppy about it, but then I can type 400 and get to that exact location. And then now I can say, all right, for example, this is how you create a new one. Let's say I want a variable that sends text data through to the game engine. Then we'll call this, for example, let's just say text variable. Then I'll click create new, so it's got the name text variable in there, and then I change its type from a float, decimal number, to integer or string. In this case, we want it to be a string, and then we can give it a default value. So we'll call this, let's see, will be dick. There we go. Create variable. So now we've got, and then there's a little checkbox here. Now that we've created this, it's available for the entire entity. But now we're going to click this little checkbox that says, okay, it has a keyframe here. It exists in this exact moment in time. And now we can double click in current value and we can change that. So for example, you could have, I'll show you, this is where this comes in really handy. As you can see, one of the actual ones I created was called Next Anim.
Yeah.
Right? So if I go to the beginning of the timeline, double click, go to the beginning here. Oops. There we go. You'll see at 0 in the timeline, next animation is active, and its current value is intro to 1, right?
Oh, okay.
So as you can see, right here in my list of animations, I have an animation called intro to 1.
Yeah.
So while this is playing, its variable called next animation is called intro to 1, and in the game engine I have an event that says whenever any animation is playing, if the variable from the spriter object called next anim has a value in it, has a string in it, then automatically play the animation that is named whatever that string is in that variable. So
cool.
just by doing that one event in Construct 2, I can now, in Spriter, just edit that metadata and carefully control how my menu system behaves, so that you'll see, like, any animation like intro, it's automatically going to trigger the playing of whatever it's introing into.
Yeah.
And then so here we have intro to 1. So this is transitioning from the original intro to the actual first frame of the idle animation for when you have the first menu item selected, right? So, and of course, if we look here, intro to 1, and its metadata for next anim, it is set to 1, right? Which is a text string, even though it looks like a number, because that is the name of the next animation. And you'll see a difference now when I go from this animation to this animation. Do you see these boxes?
Yeah.
So in Spriter Pro, you can change what you're creating with the Alt key held down. And the important one is create box here. And these, so I'm holding the Alt key and I'm clicking and dragging. I've just created a collision rectangle that can be used in a game engine to detect collisions and touches or clicks. So I created touch boxes that are going to handle the collision detection or clicking or touching on touchscreens for each thing. So these boxes are now each a separate box for each touch. And then the really cool thing is, as I showed you, you can have metadata for the entire entity. The really cool thing is in Spriter Pro, you can also have metadata for any particular sub thing in your animation. So for example, here we have box 000, which I could have named but didn't bother. So box 000, if I click on it, you'll see I've got this orange line here that gives me, shows me where it is in the sort of hierarchy. And so I can go to its specific, and you can see it has a metadata tab if I expand.
Yeah.
So if I click its metadata tab, I can add things. So I added a variable for strings called touch anim. And of course what that does, it's active here, and 1 pressed. So what that means is if it's touched, then it's going to trigger playing this animation, which is 1 pressed. And then, so here, same thing, we've got this other box, and its metadata, its touch animation is going to be 2 pressed.
Okay, right? I see.
So, and then back in Construct 2, I have an event that says, if any of these boxes are touched, which also means clicked on, so if it's touched or clicked on, then immediately trigger playing the animation from its metadata in its touch animation variable. So let me actually show you. So here we are. Oh yeah, and this is going to be important. So touch, so that means is an object touched? So untouched an object, and then I created a family since there were multiple boxes. I took I rounded up all of the what Spriter does, I mean what Construct 2 does, or I should say the Spriter plugin in Construct 2, when you import a Spriter animation, any box you created gets converted or created into a standard Construct 2 sprite, so that it interacts perfectly with all of the standard collision detection that Construct 2 uses, so it can collide with other, native Construct 2 sprites and things like that. So
Sure.
what I did was, let's see, where is, so I created a family called, it's just going to be something like touch boxes or something. No, that's torch, hold on. Menu touch boxes. All right, so if I double click on that, oh no, I have to right click and choose edit. So you'll see, if you create a family and choose edit, you'll get this little dialog where you can hunt down all of the different objects and you can add them to the family.
Okay.
So once it was imported, I carefully found every touch rectangle from the menu Spriter object, and I added it to this one family. So what that's letting me do is, like, no matter how many additional ones I add into the Spriter, so let's say I want to add an entire other option, right? So, I mean, I'm not going to go through all the work right now, but you'll see what I mean. So, so here what I did was I selected this bone, and then I press the Z key, and that's going to keep that bone selected, but also select everything that's a child of that bone.
All right.
And then I just held Control down and left-clicked and dragged the bone, and now it created a clone of the bone and all of the children,
Oh, I see.
and all at once. So that's a really convenient way to add an entire other thing. But then I would need to do the same thing. Select it, press Control Z, and then Control C to copy, and then Control Shift V to add it to all frames. So now I've got an entire other menu option. But
Cool.
then obviously I also need to create its own box. So I could do the same thing. I could select this box, hold Control, left click and drag. I can move that to the bottom of the Z order if I want to, so I can see the button. And then now this, I can set its metadata as well to trigger other animations. So as you can see, like, you can add and delete entire menu options to customize your game's features. And so long as you set the metadata properly, those variables, it's just going to work. When you import it back into Construct 2, you don't have to add any more code for your menu option to work. Like, obviously, once the menu tells it what to do, like if you add a menu option to control your game volume or something, like to mute it, then of course you would need to add some event in there that says, set the that once an animation is finished playing, like volume touched or whatever, then set the actual game's audio volume to the variable called volume that was set in Spriter. But that's all you would have to do. So anyway, the point is, it makes it super easy to make very nice, very interactive animated menu systems with Spriter. So
it's really cool.
But the other tricky thing that you have to do, and specifically in Construct 2, so that the sprite that you've just touched, it needs to you need to remind Construct 2 in a sense that, we're talking about this particular instance, like in this family of menu touches, we're talking about this specific sprite, which happens to be, like, we're tying it back together. So it's like, okay, one of these sprites was touched, but now we have to say, yes, but we need to relate it to which menu object, Spriter object, is this a part of, so that we can retrieve the metadata from the Spriter object. So that's what this event called find Spriter object for. So because we use this family here, so we have untouched. So this, as far as Construct 2 right here is concerned, this is dealing purely with normal Construct 2 sprites. So so after we detect that touch, now we need to say, okay, hey, construct2, we're dealing with that sprite, but we want to deal with that sprite as it pertains to the spriter object that it's a part of. So that's what find spriter object for, and then you can see it's the same thing, menu touch boxes. So that's the really, if you leave this out, none of it will work. Like it won't be able to retrieve the metadata from the spriter thing because you didn't tell it to sort of correlate, like, hey, which sprite was this and how does it pertain to the spriter animation? So that's what that's doing. So the way you would add that, you would do add action, and then you would go to the spriter object, which I think is called, what is it called? Menu. Yep. So you would click on this, and then you would choose. There should be something in here called find. Let's see. I don't remember where it is. Let me see. I'm not seeing it currently. I really should be wearing my glasses too. Let's see. Entity. Oh, there it is. Objects, find spriter object from C2 object.
Cool.
So you just click that, and then you would do, well, which one? So because it was the family, menu touch, I could just do menu touch. Oops. Menu touch. And that's how you add that. And then, so I'm deleting that redundant one. And then I set the animation of the spriter object. So you'll see the menu spriter object set its animation to the variable touch anim. So that's another really important one. Let me quickly show everyone how I do that. So I do add action. I go back to the menu. Menu spriter object. I do set animation, and then instead of a text string where obviously I could type a specific one like intro, in this case we need to retrieve metadata from spriter, so again I go to menu here, I double click on that, and I've got all these options, and I look for variable or value, so it's tags and variables. I go into value, and then you can see, so we have the spriter object, menu, value, and then here is where I would click, it was called, I think, touch anim. So that's how it's retrieving that particular value from the metadata from that particular thing.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, I need to clarify again. Like you can read it here. It says returns the current value of the spriter. This would be from the main metadata of the entire entity. So you can see I need the object's name and then the name of the variable. Right. So variable name first, it says right here, and then object name. So here's the variable name, but then I would need a comma, and then I would need the object name, and then that would be the let's see, found object. Okay, so so then we would go back again. We would go into menu. There we go, menu, and then somewhere in here there is going to be found object. Objects, found object. So I double click on that. So whatever it found was the object that it was touched based on spriter. That's going to be its name there. That's the name of its metadata value called touch anim. Play from start. That's all good. So that's how I created that event.
So is the found object variable automatically loaded from the find spriter action you have at the top?
Yes, that once you do find object, the spriter plugin is automatically now keeping for this one event. It's going, oh, okay, this is the object's name, this is its position, any other relevant data, it now has handy. So like we could set like if we went in Spriter and for some bizarre reason we set this collision rectangle's angle to something weird,
Yeah.
then I could uh, then I could set even like the angle of something else to match that angle.
Okay.
But yeah. So anyway, that's how that works. And then one
Cool.
other cool thing I should mention is, let me get rid of that extra box I created. Not that it really matters, but anyway. So I don't plan on saving this. So another cool thing is what are called triggers. So and I showed this for the boss, how in the intro animation of the boss there's a very specific keyframe where the boss lands, and then I use a trigger in Spriter to trigger a screen shake.
Right.
So yeah, that's called a trigger, or an event trigger. But you already know how to do that, and I think I used that for some aspect of the menu system, but I can't remember why specifically. But yeah, you get the idea. If you wanted to trigger, like let's say you were being really playful and you create your menu system, but then you also have like your characters playing in the background. If you remember, for like in Super Mario 3 on the Nintendo Entertainment System, like the intro screen, it says the title, but down below it's got the characters running around and they're like bouncing off of turtle shells and stuff.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that. If you want, you could have those as like regular sprites or whatever in Construct 2 doing their thing, but then you could have it so that when the user is picking specific menu options at specific times, you could do anything. You can trigger, trigger a firework going off in the background, or trigger,
cool.
Whatever, a character sneezing or jumping or whatever.
Right.
So you could do really cool, playful things with triggers. And to do that, you would just go in here. You right-click in anywhere in this hierarchy here, and up at the top it says append event trigger at time.
Okay.
And so you can see wherever I am in the timeline, that's where this red is. So we could do firework, or obviously screen shake or whatever. And then now you can see we have an event trigger called firework, and now we have we can expand that, and now we have metadata available for that trigger. So we could set like which firework or what color is it going to be or whatever are other values that we could set within the event trigger.
Awesome.
So that's how you can do entire menu systems in Spriter.
That's pretty powerful stuff.
Yep, and then so you could even do like submenus just by sort of visually creating it. The other really important thing I did not mention is, so let's go back to one of the menu. Oh, and that's the other cool thing. You don't want the menu system to be able to be interacted with, obviously, when it's in the middle of a transition, or like if it's playing the animation like you just selected an option, you don't want them to be able to go, oh no, I actually want to go up now to another menu option, right? Like you've selected it, that's it, like until it's done with whatever it needs to do. So you'll see that those metadata values don't, none of them are ever active, except of course for next anim. But the thing I was going to mention is, so here we have an actual an animation that can be interacted with. So only those have the touch boxes, and only those have metadata for other things. So let's look over here. We've got an up and a down. So this is really cool. So these variables tell it what animation to play if the player presses up or down. Right? So I've got it tied in Construct 2, so that if the player presses up or down on the keyboard or the control pad, and it's in this particular animation, because these variables are active, it's going to automatically, if I press up, it's going to, in this case, play the animation called 1 to 3. So it's going to transition. And that's because 1 is selected. So if you press up, it's going to loop to the bottom, which is 1, 2, 3. So, and you can see if I look at the animation called 1 to 3, what it does is it goes all the way down,
Oh, cool.
right? And then it
Yeah.
illuminates that one, and then you can see it's going to say in metadata, next anim is 3. So once it's done playing this animation that cannot be interacted with, there's no touch boxes, there's no, none of those variables are set. Like the user can't do anything until
Right.
it's done playing this and it switches to animation 3, at which point it's got all its touch boxes. So you can never accidentally, you don't need to make any careful programming that says in Construct 2, you don't have to say, well, don't let them touch any of these boxes if it's in the middle of a transition, or if it's playing the animation like you just touched a box. Like those
Yeah.
boxes just don't exist anymore, so you don't have to worry about it. And the variables for what to do, if you press up or down or the select key, because those variables are inactive, it will be completely unresponsive to any input from the user. So
Interesting.
anyway, really,
Cool.
really useful way to be able to create very, like, you could do, you could go crazy. You could like
Yeah.
add all kinds of cool, like these animations look pretty static in this simple example. It just has sort of the bouncing um, arrow here.
Yeah.
But this whole thing, you could make this whole thing pulse very easily. All I would need to do is like select this, and I'm holding shift and dragging this bottom corner, so now the whole box is bigger
Yeah.
at this keyframe. So then, I forgot to get it scale, so I'm going to go here and set its scale to 1, 1. So now the size of this is going to be sort of throbbing along with the movement of the arrow.
Oh, neat.
So as you can see,
That's
super
cool.
easy to edit things. You could use
Yeah.
you could use image swapping. Like I could make it so that it does a really obnoxious, because that's what we want. We want to annoy the player. Let's see. So we can make it
Sounds right.
flash back and forward from dark to light by doing an image swap. So you can see now, like, it's got this annoying blank thing going on. Does it have your attention yet? Can you
Yes,
tell
it
which
does.
one is selected? So as you can
Yes.
see, and then hey, why
Are you
not?
sure that that's the one I selected?
Yeah, exactly. So hey, it's not screaming for your attention enough yet. So
No,
let's
no, we
make
need to.
the. So as you can see, you can go nuts very easily.
I see that. Awesome.
So yeah, so it just really gives you an insane amount of control. And the really cool thing, like I said, you could add entire menu options very, very easily. Like imagine if I wanted to add, like, and remember, you can always add back in this screen. I shouldn't have done it there. I should have gone to a keyframe. I just added a unnecessary keyframe, but let me go back to keyframe 0. Drag that on, make sure it's at 0, 0. Put it to the back, and now, like, let's say this yes was a flag, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I could put that up there, make sure it's in all keyframes, and now I could just add metadata to that with the names of the character maps for like English, French, Russian, whatever, and then I would just go into character maps and create new character map, call it French in this example. And then you're going to tell it, you're going to select from here, and you're going to say, okay, yes is going to be oui, or if you want to be really casual, oui bien sûr, which is yes of course. So you could, you would just set up, like, I don't have a oui graphic image, but we'll change yes to no,
Right.
because you know how rude and contrarian
Yes.
those French people supposedly are. So
Yeah,
we could do
clearly.
that. So so now you'll see if I activate that character map to take a look at it. Oops, it's not working out. That must be a different yes graphic. Hold on a second. Well, you get the, yeah, you can see there's, where is it? Yeah, I've got too many stuff. I don't want to fish around, but you get the idea that you
Okay.
would set, let me see what's, oh, no, I didn't set it actually. It says ignored. Oh, it's right click, that's why. So yes will become no. All right.
Okay.
So now, there we go. See?
Oh, neat.
So this is a way to test, and you can stack. You can stack. Uh, you can have multiple character maps and have them active all at the same time if you wanted to. Obviously, that wouldn't work with language because you're just switching all text things to their equivalent. But
Right.
you could have a Christmas theme where your text looks different and there's like a Santa Claus hat on some letters. Anything
Sure.
you want to do, so that you could. Anyway, that's the idea.
I like it.
So, yeah. So then all I would need to
That's cool.
do is add a metadata value called French to this, right? And then I would add an event in construct2 that says, oh, and I would add a collision box. I forgot. I would add a collision box, and I would do the metadata for the collision box. So in here, Alt click and drag. Now I have this box, and we could even call this box French as well. And then we could give that its metadata like so. Just double click in here. Make sure we're at 0, and then do touch char map, for example. Create new, set it to a string, default value will be French, create variable, and make it active. And now if I save that out and re-imported it into construct2, I could make an event in construct2 that says if that particular box is pressed, then set the character map of the spriter object to whatever the variable is in that value we created for that touch box. So just like that, we would add language, which I'll probably do, at least
That's
to the
cool.
deluxe version of this engine.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's how that all works.
That's really neat.
Yeah, so that's how you do an advanced menu system in construct2.
Very cool.
So if you don't mind, I don't want to keep you up forever. I would like to show you and everybody else a sneak peek at the first full game project that I'll be completing once this engine is done and released for people
Oh yeah.
to be able
Love
to
to see
make their
that.
own games with. So let me close this. Don't save. So this is also made in construct2, and this is a cool thing to point out is like that previous game engine we were working on that was a bit more modern, and it's got it uses filtering. When you do zooming in and out, it's not trying to keep pixels nice and chunky like for a retro game.
Yeah.
But construct2 does allow you, if you work on a game that's especially at a low resolution, and you want it really authentically retro, so you don't want it doing any blurring or filtering, or scaling or scrolling things at partial pixel amounts. What you do in the project property, so you would click on the name of the entire project here, its properties would be here, and you can see there is pixel rounding. So this is for not only scrolling position, but also position of every particular sprite at any particular moment. If pixel rounding it's off by default, and that means it's going to be able to use filtering to even if you only move it 1 pixel over the course of a second, it's going to be using filtering to visually tween that movement of 1 pixel. So you turn pixel rounding on, and now it can't do that. So it's going to wait until the movement is past the threshold, and it'll pop it to the next pixel location. So that way you're not going to get any partial pixel positioning. And then the other thing you need to do is set the sampling to point. So by default it's linear, so that's going to give it the ability to blend and interpolate and anti-alias and all that stuff for like modern games. But you turn it off, and now you're keeping every pixel exactly how you intended it for pixel art games. And then another really cool thing, so this game is the one I think I mentioned in the past that I'm specifically making to look exactly like it would on an 8-bit Nintendo. So I did a lot of study of the capabilities of the Nintendo, the graphic limitations, like how many colors can be used per tile and what the color limitations are per
Wow.
tile. And so I designed a game to look as nice and modern as I could, but literally within those technical limitations. Like there are a lot of cool retro games that are retro in general aesthetic. They intentionally use the same color palettes from
Yeah.
things like the 8-bit Nintendo, but then they use higher resolutions and lots of layers of scrolling
Right.
and stuff like that. So I decided I just felt like being a little more sort of hardcore retro developer.
Yeah.
Not as hardcore as actually programming it to work on the 8-bit Nintendo. I'd love it if someone, if real programmers made a port someday that actually ran out of a cartridge in an 8-bit Nintendo. But the point
Cool.
is, I'm designing it so that's theoretically possible in the future,
Right.
and just make it an even more authentic retro feeling because I'm actually working within the color, sprite, scrolling limitations, and just seeing how creative I could be within those technical constraints to add cool layered scrolling and stuff. So just to give you an example, we'll just start from the beginning. The splash screen is not completely finished, nor is the menu system. So as you
Hmm.
can see, it's a little postage stamp if you run it not at full screen, and there's still debugging stuff going on, but you get the idea. And what's cool is this is going to work for touch devices as well. Like you can see the buttons reacting to my touch, but it's not tied into the menu system yet, oh, except for the
Okay.
select button. But I can touch the slot. I can choose continue to erase the data. And now, oh, I don't know why it's showing. Oh yeah, that's a level select. Okay.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Oh, nice subway or whatever in the background.
Yeah, exactly. So as you can see, I'm using the old tricks that you can use on old consoles of screen slicing. So if you look up above, those cloud layers are because I'm horizontally slicing the what would be the Nintendo screen, so I could scroll those bits separately.
Yeah.
And then that moon that looks like it's behind the clouds is actually a sprite that's alternating a dither pattern, like in our previous conversation about Amos.
Yeah.
With that shmup, I have the one image split into two variations of the image with a dither mesh, adding a grid of transparent pixels or a checker pattern of transparent pixels, and it swaps back and forth at 60 frames per second. Those two images, so you get a very convincing translucency effect when actually that moon is on top of the clouds, not behind it.
Cool.
And then yeah, so the subway is actually just swapping out tiles quickly. So the 8-bit Nintendo could swap out very quickly tiles, images for a particular tile. So it's that train isn't actually scrolling smoothly. It's popping at 8 by 8 pixel tile increments to create the illusion that a subway is scrolling through. And as you can see, I shake the screen for added effect
I see that.
when the
Yeah.
subway is coming through. So here's the player sprite, which is all of this is based very strongly on the actual limitations. So that character is his body is all 3 colors, and then you've got a single sprite used to make the head different colors.
Yep.
So you've got the wall jump, and so far this is already feeling very authentic in the controls. I'm going to pick up my control pad now, and so I can wall jump. And much like a fantastic 8-bit Nintendo game, come to think of it, I hope the volume of this isn't too loud. I'm going to stop playing for... Did I add a mute? Yeah, I'm just going to stop playing it for a second. But what was I talking about? Oh yeah, there was a fantastic game on the 8-bit Nintendo. Actually there was I think 2 of them. There was a sequel, DuckTales. Have you ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Scrooge McDuck had a great mechanism where, sort of like Mario, you could do what I call the butt bounce. You could bounce off of an enemy to kill them, or hurt them, or stun them. But in the case of Scrooge, you had to do something more than just jump and then land on top. I think you had to hold down and press the jump key or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But I added a similar thing So I'm going to run the game again. I hope it's not too loud, everybody. So let's see. Can you hear it, by the way? Probably not.
I can't, no.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. But it's no big deal. There's not a lot of sound, but I'm just hoping it's not annoyingly loud for the people that are going to end up watching the stream.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the point is, I can once I jump, if I hold down and press attack, so the character has basically an energy sword.
Yeah.
But you can actually use that to even bounce off of dangerous things like spikes here. And then if you manage to get high up enough over an enemy, and then if I hold down and press jump, I can slide under things.
Oh, cool.
Oh yeah, and then, so as I mentioned, I'm using that screen slicing trick to get parallax scrolling. Oh, and I even used some extra sprites. Do you see those little cars going by in the distance?
Yeah,
at the bottom?
I see those.
So, anyway, because I'm slicing the screen, theoretically this wall here should be getting sliced as well. But the trick is that wall is actually being made out of sprites. So I can get away with, or it would be on an 8-bit Nintendo.
Right.
But that's the trick. So I've got some really nice parallax going. But anyway, so oops.
That's amazing. That looks really nice.
Theoretically, and to be more accurate, probably to pull off all of this tile animating to get that, like if you look at the skyline back there, the buildings, there's actually a further back layer of buildings that are scrolling at a separate speed. It's using animated tiles for that as well, for that looping pattern. So to be able to animate that many tiles on screen at once, the 8-bit Nintendo might need those later generation 8-bit Nintendo cartridges that had a little extra processor added to it.
Oh, right.
But anyway, so like a lot of the great later games had that. So it's still within the technical possibilities of classic 8-bit Nintendo games. Like, you know, the great ones.
Sure.
Like that came later. Like there's another amazing one called Nemo the Dream Master, I think.
Okay.
Which is a technical.
I've heard of it. I've never played it or seen it.
Yeah, it's not only a very fun game, but also technically one of the more amazing later generation 8-bit Nintendo games. But anyway, so as you can see, there's an enemy down low there, and that's a deadly fall. So I can actually, if I'm careful, use my little bounce trick to get across it. So anyway, and then those are mines, and then I have to do a sequence of wall jumps here. And I'll just show you a little bit more of the game before I end this stream and let you sleep.
Sure.
Right. So, and you can see if you miss, you're stuck for a second. So there's a penalty for trying this powerful move. If you're not careful, oh, that's a bug.
No.
But yeah, if you're not careful, is that someone knocking on my door or a neighbor's door? Anyway, if you are not careful, there's a penalty where you're stuck and therefore vulnerable to enemy attack if you hit the ground with that sword attack. So as you can see, there's a bunch of spikes here.
Yep.
But maybe if I'm really skillful, I can use this to get across. Let me see. Oops, no. Oh boy. Well, anyway, you get the idea. If I was really careful, I could stay up there, and there might be a secret up there. And here's a cool thing. I can... Oops, I can die. No, hold on a second. I'm going to drop it down. I can bounce back enemy shots, and if the timing is right... If the timing is right, I can hit him with his own shot when his guard is down, but I don't think I'm done programming this yet, so... I can kill him somehow. There we go. And this one dropped a key card, so I can grab that key card, and now I can get into this other area. Oops. Yeah, I'm not done programming these guys, come to think of it. Theoretically, you can stun him by bouncing a shot back and get behind him and then kill him. But anyway, so here's a locked door here. And then now I have the key card, so I can get in, and there's a little thing that extends. If you look now in the upper left, I've expanded my hit points to be 3, it used to be 3 blocks, so now I can have 4 blocks of energy.
Oh, okay.
And so now
I see that up there, yeah.
Here. And the cool thing, you see that below? I'm in a train station, a futuristic train station. And,
Right.
and look up, now the screen is my character. It says danger because I've been detected and there's an annoying alarm sound going off that's probably driving people crazy. And now the character says, oh no, that portrait image is not finished, by the way. It says, oh no, the train is leaving. And so I press B to continue. And the train is moving.
Oh, cool.
Brakes mode, he breaks through the window, and the next level begins, crashing through and landing on the train that was leaving. So you see those black boxes, those silhouettes?
Yes.
I can actually use my, I can also do a bouncing, so I have two variations. If I use the jump button, I do oops, I just killed myself. So I can crack, that's a hint, like if you do this is like a drop kick that'll let you stun enemies. Then if you want to do the more dangerous thing, you can, I can actually shatter that, and that big explosion is created with the animated tiles.
Wow.
So anyway, so there's a little incentive to break it open so you can see if the things down there are either bombs or useful pickup items in crates.
Yeah.
So let me show you. Get to another one. Oops. So I'm going to say I can't tell what's in there. I can't tell if it's a bomb or a useful item. I can crack the glass. That lets me know, oh, I can probably break that, and then you try this.
It's a bomb.
Then it's a bomb in that case.
Wow.
So let's see what's down here. Oh, and the other thing, again, if you're not careful, then you're going to end up stuck down there, and then the bomb is going to hit you. But as you can see, in that case, it was worth it, because there was an actual health bar increase down there.
Right.
I'm just going to make it to the end and show you the first boss that is actually fully programmed.
Wow.
Which is also
cool.
like made in Spriter, so I'm getting to the actual... Yeah, and I'm really enjoying how... Oh, and I really should mention, by the way, the co-founder of the game studio that I'm working on creating, this will be our first collaborative game, named Corey. He did most of the graphics. I did the character sprite, and I'm like art directing. But most of these beautiful 8-bit Nintendo graphics were done by him.
Excellent.
Yep. So here we have little warning arrows telling us that beams in this tunnel are coming that I have to dodge. And then after this sequence, then the boss will come. And oh yeah, I forgot the rockets too. Again, I'm using animated tiles for those explosions, so we can have nice big explosions even on the 8-bit Nintendo.
That's
without
neat.
a ridiculous amount of sprite flickering. There we go, and here comes the boss, and he's a transformer because I'm a product of the 80s.
Yes.
Oh yeah, watch this. This is cool. When he does that fist punch, I can actually bounce off of his fist and then get up on top. Alright, now he transformed again, he's going to rush me. Oops, I haven't played this in a while, so I'm not very good. If I'm careful, I can keep sending him bouncing back if I time it really well. And now he's, again, animated tiles for that cool effect. I'm going to die, this is embarrassing. I haven't played this in like a couple of months. Oops, oh yeah, I have a dash move too that I didn't tell you about. But like an air dash. Alright, he's going to Oh, I forget he does the strafe run now. So you can see he switched modes because I got his I got his health to a certain level. Alright, let's see if I can actually beat him. Oops. Oh, come on. There we go. So again, using animated tiles to make him blow up.
Yeah.
And ooh, another key card. So now, and as you can see for the tunnel effect, I can't like have an entire parallax layer represent an actual tunnel coming. So I'm simply doing a palette fade, palette change to fade very quickly from all black in the background to the colored background. So it creates the illusion, it happens so quickly, you just feel like, oh yeah, I just went into a tunnel or I just came out of a tunnel. But you never see the edge of the tunnel come onto the screen.
Right.
It's just suddenly it quickly fades to, oh, I'm in a black area now, and then it fades out. And it's, while you're playing, it's perfectly convincing.
Right. I didn't even notice
So
that
now,
it was.
we are going to go. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. Oh.
Now we're going into a subaquatic base with all new enemies. I can send their little shots back at them if I'm careful. And oh yeah, and check this out. So hopefully it's obvious a lot of love and care. The fish back there are the screen sliced to add those moving fish, and then that little beam that makes this mid-layer window. So remember, all of this is possible in the 8-bit Nintendo. All this parallaxing. So that is a stack of sprites. The column there that separates, that looks like the sort of window seam there.
Right.
And then this is a really cool enemy. So I can jump up and I can attack like this. But another thing, and obviously if I touch this beam, I get hurt. I'm going to eventually add an electrified animation. But the cool thing is, if I'm I didn't mention this. Right now you can see there's stuff for speed running on the left and right built into the interface. So that you have a counter, it's going to say best time.
Oh yeah.
Between your best time and all that stuff.
See that?
So, and then on the left is for the current level, and then the right is for the overall game. So you're going to be able to turn that on and off. So it's like got built-in speed running support. And
cool.
But so if you're speed running, you want a faster way to get past this enemy. Let's see. I've got some bugs still. Yeah, this is not done. There we go. Okay, so so you see this dash move. If I very carefully line up my dash, I can get through that tough laser enemy with one hit. So long as the dash, if I mess up and hit the laser, then it slows me down. I bounce off and get hurt. But if I'm level with the actual enemy that's emitting the beam, then I destroy the enemy and the beam disappears and I just keep right on going. So, anyway. And now I'm not done with any more of the game, so it just loops back around to the train level.
Okay.
But as you can see, that's how it's going. The working title, and it might stay the title, I don't know yet, is Cyber Jack. And there's a cool story that's going to be going on, and
I love it, man. This is really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really a product of a labor of love by both of us.
I can really tell.
Corey, and we really wanted it to be very visually appealing, but very legitimately retro feeling and visually and in gameplay. And we really wanted to make it feel like, wow, this is just like a top-notch, like top-tier franchise that I somehow never found, that I somehow never discovered. And look, that's the feeling I want to create. So anyway,
I think it does. I think that does. It evokes that feeling very well right here.
Thanks. Yep. So it's going to certainly take a while, at least 6 months once I'm done with the platformer engine. Realistically, probably more like a year of additional work. But we've just been working on this sort of on the side for quite a while, and I've had to take a break to handle a lot of spriter stuff and this platformer engine that I've been showing you. But anyway, I made the game. I should be bored with it, and I'm playing it. I'm actually playing it while I'm talking. But
I can tell you like it. I can tell you're having fun.
Yeah, it really is a labor of love. We're really, and this is still very, like, the graphics are pretty much how they're going to look in the final thing for this in-game stuff you've seen so far. Well, there'll be a few more effects added and things like that, but this definitely is a good estimation of what the finished product is going to be like, and we haven't I haven't had time yet to really make sure all of the gameplay is as fun as possible, tweaking every aspect of the physics and which enemies are where and how they behave. But as you can see, it's coming along, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, looks amazing. Can't wait to go buy it.
Well, it's going to be a nice, inexpensive. It should be available once it's done for almost everything, as far as PC, Linux, Mac, and then Android and iPhone or iOS devices. So
Right.
you'll have your options, and it's going to be a low price point game. So yeah. Anyway, that's what I've been working on, I can't wait to get back to working on it. But anyway,
Yeah.
this is the first time anyone has seen it aside from
Well,
myself.
thank
And
you. I feel
playing it.
honored. Just I'm very excited about it. That's really great.
Yeah. So yeah, and eventually going back to Amiga stuff, it would be very cool if eventually we get some Amiga developers excited. We could like I could not only donate the art, and we'd have the whole game to show how everything's supposed to work and the level layouts and stuff, and I could even upgrade the art,
Yeah.
like add color and stuff like that, and
Sure.
stuff like that. So
Make a retro port, man.
yeah, make a port that runs on the instead of the 8-bit Nintendo one that runs on the Amiga, like an enhanced Amiga version. So
Cool.
anyway, yep, and that obviously the better any of my projects and game projects do, I'm going to start investing more time and money on making the whole modern games for classic Amiga things a reality. Start commissioning specific like little tools and programs and stuff like that. So
Right. Awesome.
anyway, so that's what's going on. I don't want to keep you awake much longer. So
I suppose I should turn in soon, but man, this is really cool. I'm excited about it.
thanks. Yeah, I'm glad. So far, I've had good reaction from the very few people, like I said, aside from Corey and like my brother.
Yeah.
No actual audience, no actual, no third party people have seen, so to speak, have seen it until now. So anyway, yep, that's what I'll be working on after this platformer that we've been working on, that you've been watching me work on is
Sure.
done. All right, so I guess I will stop rambling and let you go to sleep. And for
All right.
anyone that ends up watching, thanks very much. And future streams obviously will be updates of this once the platformer engine is done. So that's it. Thanks a lot
Great.
very much, and I will.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike.